What if the only thing standing between you and the life you want is the noise you've been drowning in? The noise of opinions, expectations, distractions, the chaos that surrounds you every single day. Maybe you feel it right now. That tension in your chest, that low hum of anxiety, the way your thoughts never seem to slow down. You're constantly plugged in, always connected, always reacting. And yet, somehow, you feel more disconnected from yourself than ever before. You wake up and your mind is already racing. You check your phone, you scroll, you compare, you absorb more than you can handle. The world pulls at you from every direction. Everyone has something to say. Everyone wants a piece of your attention. And in the middle of all that noise, you begin to forget who you are. You start shaping yourself around what people want. You start moving how others expect. You smile when you're breaking. You talk when you want to be silent. You say yes when everything in you is screaming no. Slowly, quietly, you abandon yourself. Not because you want to, but because you've never been shown another way. But here's the truth that changes everything. Silence is not weakness. Stillness is not laziness. Focusing on yourself is not selfish. It's survival. It's clarity. It's where your real strength lives. When the world gets loud, the brave thing to do is go inward, not to escape, but to remember. Because when you turn down the noise, something powerful begins to rise. You begin to hear your own voice again, the one you've been ignoring. You begin to feel what's really going on beneath the surface. You stop performing. You stop reacting. You begin to respond, intentionally, clearly, powerfully. And in that space, something shifts. You don't chase anymore. You don't beg for validation. You don't need the spotlight. You just know. You know what you want. You know who you are. You start walking with a quiet kind of power, the kind that doesn't need to be explained. You stop explaining. You stop proving. And the most amazing thing happens. Things start to align. People begin to treat you differently. You attract peace. You attract clarity. You attract opportunities that match your energy. Not because you forced it, but because you created space for it. If you've ever felt lost, exhausted, or invisible, keep listening. Because this journey back to yourself isn't loud. It isn't flashy. It doesn't need to be posted or praised. It's silent. It's sacred. And it's the reason everything begins to fall into place. Not overnight. Not by magic. But through one powerful decision. To stop chasing the world and start returning to yourself. This is where everything changes. This is where you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And once you do that, nothing and no one can take that peace away from you again. Stay with me. Because the silence you've been avoiding might be the path to everything you've been searching for. You've been taught to measure your worth by how much noise you make, how visible you are, how loud your presence feels in a room. But that pressure to constantly be seen, heard, validated, it's draining you. It's keeping you trapped in cycles that were never built to serve your peace. Every time you reach outside of yourself for approval, you give a piece of your power away. You start to need the applause just to feel like you matter. And over time, you become addicted to the very things that make you feel hollow. There's a reason why so many people feel anxious, insecure, and unseen, because they've been living through a lens built by other people's opinions. And that lens is a prison, one where your value is decided by how well you perform, not how deeply you know yourself. But what if you stopped asking for permission to be yourself? What if you chose to unplug from the noise and meet yourself in the quiet? That's where the shift begins. The moment you decide you don't need to be understood by everyone. The moment you stop chasing likes and start honoring your own voice. The moment you realize validation isn't oxygen, it's a drug, and you can learn to live without it. Because the truth is, your worth doesn't rise or fall based on how many people approve of you. Your power isn't in how loud you are, it's in how grounded you are. When you stop needing to prove yourself, you begin to rediscover your natural strength. You walk into rooms differently. You speak with intention, not for reaction. You no longer fear silence, because you've made peace with it. And in that peace, something incredible happens. You no longer over-explain. You no longer seek to be liked. You simply are. And that presence, unshaken, self-contained, focused, that's what makes people stop and pay attention. Let others talk. Let them post, perform, react. You don't need to play that game. You're not here to win approval. You're here to win yourself back. The version of you that doesn't need a spotlight to shine. The version that doesn't ask for permission to grow. That version already exists. It's just been buried beneath years of noise, doubt, and distraction. But the moment you return to yourself, even quietly, you begin to rise. Not all progress is loud. Not all growth is shared. Some of the most powerful transformations happen in silence. And when you stop broadcasting every move, When you stop reaching for external praise, you give yourself something far more valuable: authentic self-respect. That's the reward. That's the peace. And it's waiting for you, not in the noise, not in the crowd, but in the quiet moment you choose you. So don't be afraid to step back. Don't be afraid to go quiet. Because what you'll find in the silence is exactly what the noise kept trying to distract you from: your truth, your power, your path. Silence is not the absence of noise. It's the presence of awareness. It's where everything false begins to fade, and what's real begins to rise. In silence, you can't hide behind distractions. You can't pretend. You can't scroll your way out of discomfort. You're left with yourself, your thoughts, your feelings, your truth, and that's exactly where you need to be. Because growth doesn't come from escaping reality. It comes from facing it, from standing still long enough to hear the quiet voice inside you that's been begging to be heard. That voice is the real you, the version of you that knows exactly what you need. The one who remembers who you were before fear took over, before pressure shaped your choices, before the world convinced you that your value had to be proven. When you focus on yourself, not in a self-centered way, but in a self-honoring way, you begin to hear that voice again. You begin to rebuild the connection you were never meant to lose. And the deeper that connection grows, the clearer everything becomes. Clarity doesn't scream, it whispers. And most people miss it because they're too busy running from themselves. They fill every quiet moment with noise because silence feels too raw. But that rawness is your access point. It's not weakness, it's a doorway. The discomfort you feel when you slow down isn't a sign to run, it's a signal to listen. It's your soul calling you home. When you focus inward, the external world stops controlling you. You stop reacting to every opinion. You stop bending to every expectation. You begin to respond with intention, from a place of inner power. Your energy becomes selective. Your attention becomes sacred. And your life begins to feel like it's finally moving in alignment. Not because everything outside changed, but because you did. You can't control what others think. You can't control the world's noise. But you can control what you tune into. You can decide to protect your energy, to guard your focus, to value your own peace above someone else's comfort. That's not selfish. That's strength. That's self-leadership. And most people never experience it, because they're too afraid to sit with themselves long enough to claim it. But not you. You're here for a reason. You're not listening by accident. Deep down, you know there's more for you, not more to prove, but more to become. And it doesn't require noise. It doesn't require announcements. It requires presence, stillness, focus. You've spent enough time being everything for everyone. Now it's time to become everything you were meant to be, for you. The world will keep shouting. Let it. You're learning to listen to something deeper, something wiser, something real. And the more you honor that voice, the more aligned your life becomes. Not instantly, not perfectly, but powerfully. And that's the path to everything falling into place, quietly, steadily, deeply. Stay on it. When you stop distracting yourself, you start discovering yourself. And what you find in that silence may surprise you. Not weakness, but strength. Not confusion, but clarity. Not lack, but potential. It's all been there, buried under the noise you've been trained to depend on. Every notification, every opinion, every comparison has been pulling your focus outward, keeping you disconnected from the only place your power ever lived, within. But now, by choosing silence, by choosing focus, you begin the process of remembering, reclaiming, rebuilding. Focus is not just attention, it's direction. It's energy pointed towards something meaningful. And when that energy is no longer scattered, when you stop giving pieces of yourself away to things that don't deserve them, something incredible happens. You begin to move with purpose. You begin to build momentum, not just emotionally, but biologically. Your brain starts to rewire, your thoughts shift, your actions align. What once felt impossible becomes manageable, not because it got easier, but because you got clearer. Clarity creates power, and power doesn't always look like intensity. It often looks like calm, the kind of calm that comes from knowing exactly what you're building and refusing to be pulled away from it. That's what focus gives you, not just progress, but peace. Because you're no longer at war with distractions. You're no longer fighting for approval. You're no longer running from yourself. You're centered, anchored, unshakable. Most people never get there. They live in reaction mode, jumping from one crisis to another, one trend to another, never truly grounded. But you're making a different choice. You're learning to pause, to breathe, to be intentional. That shift alone separates you from the crowd. It positions you to grow in ways they can't yet understand. Because while they're waiting for the world to change, you're changing your world, internally, powerfully, permanently. Focus is a declaration. It says, I know what matters now. It says, I'm done wasting energy on what doesn't feed me. And every time you honor that focus, you train your mind to work with you instead of against you. You stop sabotaging yourself. You stop overthinking. You act. You move. You create. That's how momentum is built. Not in grand gestures, but in small, quiet decisions, repeated consistently, without apology. And every time you return to that focus, every time you choose silence over distraction, you grow stronger. You feel more in control, not because you're forcing life to obey you, but because you've finally stopped resisting your own alignment. You're moving with your values now, with your vision, with your truth. That's how everything starts falling into place, not through noise, not through pressure, but through focus so steady, so true, that the world begins to adjust to you. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. That's what happens when you stop scattering your energy and start owning it. This is your power. This is your time. Protect it, use it, and let nothing pull you away from it again. There is power in what you choose to protect, and nothing deserves more protection than your energy. Every time you answer to drama, you spend energy. Every time you explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, you spend energy. Every time you react to things beneath your values, you spend energy. And slowly, without even realizing it, you begin to feel drained, disconnected, defeated. Not because you're weak, but because you've been giving too much of yourself away for too little in return. But the moment you decide to stop feeding what doesn't grow you, everything starts to shift. Protecting your peace isn't about hiding from life. It's about showing up for the right parts of it. It's about being available to what builds you and unavailable to what breaks you. Not everything deserves your response. Not every voice deserves space in your mind. And not every opinion deserves your time. You get to choose what you engage with. You get to choose who you give your light to. And that choice, made consistently, is how you begin to take your power back. Silence becomes a tool. Focus becomes a filter. You no longer speak just to fill space. You speak to align. You speak when it matters. And when it doesn't, you let silence speak for you. Not because you're cold, not because you're distant, but because your peace is now your priority. That inner stillness you've been cultivating, it's not just a feeling, it's a statement. It says, I don't need to prove anything. I don't need to explain myself. I'm at peace with who I am and where I'm going. That kind of peace can't be faked. It's built through boundaries, through discipline, through choosing your own growth over temporary comfort. And the more you build it, the less reactive you become. People will notice. Some will respect it. Others will be confused by it. Let them. You weren't made to be understood by everyone. You were made to live in truth. And truth doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with solitude. Sometimes it comes with walking away. Sometimes it comes with choosing silence over chaos, even when your ego wants to speak. That choice, over time, becomes your freedom. You stop needing closure. You stop needing attention. You stop needing to control how others see you. Because the more you focus on protecting your energy, the more you realize none of that ever mattered. What matters is your alignment, your peace, your ability to sleep at night knowing you honored yourself instead of pleasing the noise. You don't owe the world your energy. You owe yourself the space to grow, and that space begins with silence, with focus, with boundaries that protect your mental clarity. This is how you shift. This is how you rise, quietly, steadily, without explanation, without apology. Because when your peace becomes non-negotiable, your power becomes undeniable. And that's when everything around you starts to adjust, because you finally did. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop giving others control over your path. You stop handing them the power to shape your decisions, your direction, your identity. Silence becomes more than peace. It becomes protection. It shields you from opinions that don't matter, from noise that doesn't serve you, from conversations that drain your spirit. Because the truth is, most people don't see you as you are. They see you as they are, through their own filters, through their own insecurities. And the more you try to adjust yourself to fit their vision, the more you disappear from your own. You weren't made to be constantly accessible. You weren't made to constantly explain, prove, or convince. You were made to evolve, to expand, to rise. And that process doesn't require validation. It requires silence. Because real transformation doesn't need permission. It needs focus, it needs intention, and it needs the courage to walk alone, to grow quietly, and to trust that not everyone needs to understand your journey. The only one who needs to understand it is you. Every time you withhold your reaction, you protect your growth. Every time you choose silence over arguing, presence over pleasing, focus over fear. You strengthen your inner core. You stop bending to noise. You stop chasing closure. You begin to realize that not everything unresolved needs resolution. Sometimes peace is found not in answers, but in release, in letting go of the need to explain what you're doing, why you're doing it, and where you're going. You're going forward. That's all that matters. There is a kind of quiet that is unshakable, a presence that speaks louder than words ever could. It comes from knowing you're no longer performing for the world. You're building something real, something aligned, something lasting. And that doesn't need a stage. It needs space, time, depth. It needs the kind of silence that lets you hear your own progress, the kind that lets you feel the shift happening inside you. Subtle, steady, unstoppable. Let others misunderstand you. Let them question your silence. Let them wonder why you've pulled back, why you don't respond the way you used to, why you've stopped explaining. You've stopped because you're building. You've stopped because you're evolving. And growth requires silence. Mastery requires stillness. Power requires privacy. When you stay quiet, you're not avoiding life. You're preparing for the next level of it. What's meant for you doesn't require noise. It will find you in your stillness. It will recognize you by your energy, not your effort to be seen. And the right people, the right opportunities, the right moments, they will rise to meet you when you stop lowering yourself to meet distractions. Hold your silence with confidence. Let it be your shield and your compass. Because when you move from that place of inner knowing, when you stop explaining and start embodying, the world doesn't need to be told who you are. It begins to feel it. And that changes everything. You become magnetic the moment you stop chasing. The moment you stop reaching, explaining, justifying, your energy shifts. You move from desperation to direction, from noise to presence, from scattered to solid. And in that shift, the world begins to respond differently, because energy doesn't lie. People feel your frequency before they ever hear your words. And when you hold your own with quiet certainty, without needing to prove anything, you become a force. Not loud, not aggressive, just certain, just whole. It's not about arrogance. It's not about being better than anyone else. It's about remembering your value without needing it to be confirmed. When you know your worth, you no longer beg for connection. You no longer lower your standards just to be chosen. You no longer shrink to make others comfortable. You simply allow yourself to exist fully, without apology. And that energy draws in what aligns with you, and naturally repels what doesn't. Not because you said anything, but because you didn't. You no longer argue for your space, you embody it. There's nothing louder than someone who doesn't need to speak to be understood. And that's the kind of power you're stepping into, the kind that comes from deep inner alignment, the kind that doesn't shout, it resonates, the kind that doesn't demand, it attracts. When you focus inward and move in silence, you become intentional with everything, where your time goes, where your thoughts go, where your emotions go. You're no longer accessible to chaos. You're no longer responding to things that don't deserve a response. This is how attraction works, not just in relationships, but in life. You attract what reflects your energy, and when your energy is grounded, calm, and purposeful, the opportunities that come to you are different. You're no longer chasing noise. You're no longer confused by temporary flashes of attention. You're aligned with something deeper, and that depth becomes a filter. You no longer crave surface-level attention because you're rooted in self-respect. You know what's real. You know what's worth your time. That's what changes everything. Not what you say, not what you do to impress, but what you refuse to chase. What you walk away from, what you rise above. When you stop running after things, you give space for what's meant for you to arrive. In that space, you grow. In that space, you become. In that space, your life starts organizing itself around the energy you now hold. Let that silence be your message. Let your peace speak louder than your opinions. Let your focus speak louder than your presence. And let your energy say what words never could. That you're no longer proving, you're no longer chasing, you're no longer waiting for anyone to give you permission to become who you already are. You've stepped into alignment, and in alignment, everything starts to move. Everything starts to make sense. Everything starts to come to you, not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped forcing anything at all. Unusual activity has been detected from your device. Try again later. 96, A5E8, E1 fade in 92, 0 DFW. You don't rise by making noise. You rise by making moves in silence. The real elevation happens in the moments no one sees, when you're working on yourself, not for attention, but for alignment. When you choose discipline over distraction, peace over proving, clarity over chaos. That's where your foundation is built, and the stronger the foundation, the less validation you need. You no longer depend on the outside world to reflect your progress. You feel it, you live it, you walk in it, calm, focused, unbothered. There's a level of power that only comes when you disconnect from what's superficial, when you stop performing and start becoming. Most people don't get there because they're too busy chasing noise, addicted to reactions, addicted to visibility, addicted to short-term hits of approval. But what you're building can't be rushed. It can't be faked. And it can't be built under the spotlight. Some seasons are meant to be quiet. Some growth is meant to be unseen. Because it's in the silence that the real transformation begins. The kind that doesn't just change how you look, but who you are. The silence you're keeping isn't emptiness. It's focus. It's direction. It's trust in a process that doesn't need to be broadcast. You're not here to entertain the world with your every move. You're here to evolve. And evolution is sacred. It's not for everyone to understand. It's not for everyone to witness. That's why your silence feels so different now. It's not you shutting down. It's you tuning in. To your intuition. To your vision. To your higher self. That part of you that knows where you're going, even when others don't. This isn't about isolating yourself. It's about choosing your energy wisely. Not everyone gets access to the new you. Not every situation gets a response from the evolved you. You've learned to protect your growth, and that's what makes it real. You're no longer building for applause. You're building for alignment, for peace, for impact. And that kind of purpose doesn't need to announce itself. It reveals itself in how you move, in what you no longer tolerate, in what you no longer chase. You'll know you've shifted when silence becomes your strength, when not reacting feels more powerful than being heard, when walking away feels lighter than being right. That's the edge silence gives you. It sharpens your focus, it strengthens your mind, and it trains you to listen deeper, not to the noise around you, but to the truth within you. Keep moving quietly, keep refining yourself. Let your silence speak for you. Let your energy lead. The ones meant for you will feel it. The paths meant for you will open, and the distractions meant to test you will fall away, not because you fought them, but because you outgrew them. This is how alignment works. It doesn't shout. It doesn't rush. It arrives when you finally stop explaining and start embodying who you were always meant to be. Growth will always require distance. Distance from noise. Distance from people who drain you. Distance from habits that once felt comfortable but now feel heavy. You cannot rise while clinging to what keeps you small. And you cannot transform while staying accessible to everything that distracts you. The silence you create isn't isolation. It's protection. It's what gives you room to expand without permission, to rebuild without interruption, to rise without explanation. Most won't understand your distance, but that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is your evolution. When you focus on yourself, your vision sharpens. You begin to notice what you once ignored. How much energy you were giving to things that never gave back. How much of your time was spent proving instead of building. How much of your peace was compromised for the sake of being understood. But now, you choose different. You choose boundaries over approval. You choose presence over performance. You choose to be loyal to your own growth instead of addicted to keeping others comfortable. And with that decision, you start shedding, not in bitterness, but in truth. You start letting go of roles you were never meant to play. You start releasing identities you outgrew long ago. And the more you release, the lighter you feel. The more you detach, the freer you become. This is not loss, it's alignment. What no longer fits begins to fall away. People who don't support your next chapter naturally distance themselves. The spaces you once tolerated start to feel unbearable. And that discomfort, that's confirmation. You're not where you were. You're becoming. Let yourself outgrow what no longer nourishes your soul. Let yourself walk away from environments that feed your doubt more than your belief. Not everyone is meant to go where you're going. Not everyone will recognize the version of you that's emerging. But the right ones will. The ones who see your silence not as rejection but as refinement. The ones who recognize that your withdrawal isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The ones who respect your boundaries because they built their own. You don't have to announce who you're becoming. Let your energy shift. Let your choices speak. Let your peace be the evidence. The version of you that rises from this silence won't need to be introduced. They'll feel it, they'll see it, and those who never took you seriously will be forced to watch what they once overlooked evolve into something undeniable. Stay quiet, stay grounded, stay committed to the path you know is right for you. The people who fall away are not your loss. The ones who remain will meet you at your frequency, not your past. Protect your silence, protect your focus, and never apologize for choosing yourself. Because when you do, everything not meant for you falls away, and what remains is real. What remains is aligned. What remains is yours. What you attract changes the moment your energy changes. When you stop explaining, stop chasing, stop performing, your environment begins to reflect your evolution. The people you once fought to keep close start to fade. The situations you used to tolerate begin to feel heavy. Not because anything around you suddenly became different, but because you did. You raised your frequency, you shifted your standard, and that shift is magnetic. It calls in alignment and repels anything built on ego, insecurity, or convenience. There's no need to announce your growth, just move differently, speak less, move cleaner. Watch how everything that's real starts to rise toward you, not out of desperation, but because you've created space for it. That space is sacred. It's made by your silence, your focus, your refusal to engage in anything that dishonors your peace. You're not just stepping into a new chapter, you're becoming a new version of yourself. One that no longer reacts to noise, one that no longer clings to chaos, one that knows peace is more powerful than attention. The right people will feel your energy before they understand your words. They'll recognize the power in your stillness, the clarity in your boundaries, the strength in your silence. They won't need you to explain why you've changed. They'll respect that you have. They'll feel the difference in how you move, how you protect your time, how you no longer dilute yourself to be accepted. Your silence will speak for you, louder than words ever could. And in that silence, something greater begins to grow. Self-respect, emotional discipline, a vision so sharp that nothing can distract you from it. You no longer need reassurance because your direction is no longer up for debate. You've decided who you're becoming, and your actions now reflect that choice. Not because you need validation, but because you've outgrown needing to be seen. Your reward is not attention. Your reward is alignment. Stay grounded in that energy. Let your silence refine you. Let it filter out what no longer serves you. You'll find that the ones who are meant to walk with you won't question your quiet. They'll honor it. You won't need to chase them, prove yourself, or defend your growth. Real connection doesn't need convincing. It flows. It meets you where you are. It recognizes the work you've done even when it was invisible to the world. You're not here to be consumed by everyone. You're here to be understood by the right few, and most importantly by yourself. The deeper you know yourself, the less you need from others. And when you need less, you attract more. Not out of lack, but out of wholeness. That's the paradox of silence. It's not emptiness. It's strength. It's depth. It's clarity. And it's the path to everything aligning. Not through noise, but through a presence so powerful, the world feels it before it ever hears it. You don't have to be seen to be successful. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. The world has conditioned you to believe that visibility equals value, that silence means you're falling behind. But real progress happens away from the spotlight. It happens in the early mornings when no one's watching, in the quiet choices you make when no one's clapping, in the consistent effort that gets no applause but builds unshakable momentum. You're not falling behind. You're building something they can't see yet. And that's exactly how it should be. There is a level of transformation that only happens when you stop broadcasting your journey and start embodying it, when you stop documenting the work and start doing the work. That's when the shift becomes real. That's when you no longer need to talk about change because you've become the change. Your energy speaks before your words ever can. It carries truth. It carries experience. It carries discipline. And that's what makes it undeniable. Let others chase recognition. Let them fight for attention. You're moving different now. You're not building for applause. You're building for alignment, for integrity, for peace. And the irony is, the quieter you become, the more people feel you. Not because you're louder, but because you're more real. Because you've chosen to grow in private and rise without explanation. You've stepped into a frequency that doesn't compete, doesn't compare, doesn't explain. It just is. Strong, grounded, clear. Not everyone will understand your silence. Some will think you've changed. Some will think you've become cold. Let them. Growth isn't supposed to be comfortable for those who only knew the version of you that lived for approval. That version is gone. You're no longer shrinking to fit in. You're no longer bending to be liked. You've stopped negotiating your value in rooms that couldn't recognize it. And because of that, you've become untouchable, not through ego, but through clarity. Clarity is a kind of power that doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to be validated. It just moves, strategically, intentionally, unapologetically. You now understand that most people operate from noise. They speak just to be heard, react just to be seen. But your power is in your ability to respond, not react. To observe, not absorb. That's the discipline you've built in the silence. That's the strength they don't see until it's too loud to ignore. So keep moving in that direction. Keep choosing yourself, quietly. Keep investing in your growth, consistently. Let your results speak in ways your words never could. You owe no one your process. You owe everyone your elevation. And that elevation doesn't need an audience. It just needs your full attention. Stay grounded. Stay focused. Stay silent. Because in the silence, your life is speaking. And what it's saying, through every aligned step you take, is this: you've already become what they never saw coming. The more you protect your energy, the more your life begins to protect itself. Everything you once felt the need to control begins to fall into place. Not because it became easier, but because you stopped resisting the truth. You stopped forcing what wasn't meant to stay. You stopped trying to hold on to what was already slipping. And in that surrender, you found something you'd been chasing all along: freedom. Not the kind that comes from escape, but the kind that comes from alignment. You no longer chase outcomes. You chase peace. And when peace becomes your goal, everything changes. You begin to notice how much noise you once allowed into your life, how often you entertained doubt, comparison, drama, and distraction, not because you lacked strength, but because you hadn't yet realized how much it was costing you. Every time you defended your worth to people who didn't value it, you gave your power away. Every time you responded to negativity, you delayed your growth. Every time you explained your choices, you shrank your confidence. But now you're awake, and that awareness is what makes you unshakable. You no longer need to explain your silence. It's not absence, it's presence. You're not avoiding life, you're aligning with it. You've started to understand that the deepest work isn't done in public, it's done in private, where no one claps, no one watches, and no one interferes. And that work is paying off, not in likes, not in approval, but in results that feel real: inner peace, mental clarity, emotional strength. These aren't surface-level wins, these are foundational shifts, and they last. You've also learned that healing isn't loud. Growth isn't dramatic, it's subtle, quiet, and consistent. It looks like saying no without guilt, like walking away without anger, like choosing yourself without apology. That's the transformation you're living, not for anyone else's recognition, but for your own liberation. You're not who you used to be, and that's the point. You've outgrown what once defined you, and now, you're building a new standard, not just for yourself, but for everything that enters your life. This standard is sacred. It's the boundary that guards your future, and it's built on self-respect. You no longer allow temporary emotions to dictate permanent decisions. You no longer invite chaos just to feel connection. You've outgrown the need to be understood by everyone, because you've finally understood yourself. That kind of self-connection can't be taught. It's earned through solitude, reflection, and a ruthless commitment to becoming who you were meant to be. Keep going. Keep choosing silence over noise, growth over comfort, peace over validation. You're not falling behind, you're rising above, quietly, powerfully. And as you continue, the world will begin to respond, not to your words, but to your energy. Because when you focus on yourself and stay silent, the universe listens. And when the universe listens, everything, absolutely everything, begins to fall into place. Not everyone is meant to go with you. Not every voice deserves space in your mind, and not every presence belongs in your path. The more you rise, the more you realize that elevation requires separation. It's not about cutting people off with anger. It's about choosing peace without permission. You no longer owe anyone your old identity. You don't need to keep proving who you are to those committed to misunderstanding you. When you stop fighting for spaces that drain you, you start creating space for what truly feeds your growth. That's the power of focused silence. It becomes a filter for your future. When you stop explaining, you start evolving. You begin to recognize how much time you wasted trying to convince others of your value, your vision, your heart. But your worth was never a group project. It doesn't depend on who sees it or who approves. It depends on whether you honor it. And honoring it means protecting it. From distractions, from drama, from the parts of you that once settled for less because you feared being alone. But silence teaches you this. You're never alone when you're in alignment. You're surrounded by clarity, by purpose, by intention. And that's more powerful than any crowd. Real transformation begins when you stop seeking permission to grow. The old version of you needed validation. The current version only needs discipline. You're no longer here to meet expectations. You're here to exceed your own. And that kind of mindset doesn't make sense to everyone. That's okay. It's not supposed to. When you level up, not everyone will understand the quiet. They'll say you've changed. And they'll be right. You've changed your standards, your boundaries, your direction. And that shift makes you magnetic, not because you're trying to be seen, but because you're finally centered. The more silent you become, the more you start to hear what actually matters. You hear your intuition getting louder. You hear your mind clearing. You hear your energy realigning. And suddenly, you're no longer reacting to the noise. You're responding to your truth. That's what makes you powerful. You no longer chase anything that requires you to abandon yourself. You no longer accept chaos as a normal part of life. You choose order, even if it means walking alone. You choose truth, even if it means leaving behind what's familiar. That's what inner strength looks like. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's steady, quiet, and deeply rooted. You are not behind. You are not missing out. You are exactly where you need to be, becoming exactly who you were meant to become. Let that truth sink in. Let it guide you. Let it free you from the pressure to explain, to perform, to prove. You are done shrinking. You are done chasing. You are now building. And in your silence, your life is speaking louder than ever. Keep listening. Keep growing. Everything you've been waiting for is already finding its way to you. Stay grounded. Stay focused. Stay silent. Growth is uncomfortable because it demands that you let go of everything that made you feel safe but kept you small. You can't become who you're meant to be while holding on to who you were just to make others comfortable. That's the tension you're feeling, the pull between who you've always been and who you know deep down you're capable of becoming. And the space between those two versions is where most people quit. But not you. You've already tasted what silence offers. You've seen what focus creates. You know what happens when you stop pouring into distractions and start pouring into discipline. That's not just self-improvement, that's self-respect. There comes a moment when you stop asking for change and start creating it. You stop wishing for better and start becoming better. That moment doesn't happen when everything feels easy. It happens when everything feels uncertain, but you still choose to trust your direction. That's when power is born, not the loud, temporary kind that fades with applause, but the quiet, lasting kind that's built in the dark, when no one's watching. You don't need the world to understand your silence. You just need to stay loyal to your evolution, because the future you're building isn't for their approval. It's for your freedom. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you break a chain. Every time you walk away from chaos instead of participating, you raise your standards. Every time you keep moving forward without announcing it, you claim back your energy. And that's what changes everything. Where your energy goes, your life follows. If you keep leaking it into people who don't reciprocate, into patterns that don't serve you, into environments that drain you, you'll stay stuck in cycles that look like progress but feel like burnout. But when you start protecting your energy like it's sacred, your world starts to shift. Not because things magically change, but because you do. You no longer wait for peace, you choose it. You no longer tolerate confusion, you clear it. You no longer seek closure, you create it. That's what happens when you stop explaining yourself and start building yourself. You start to notice how much noise you used to accept simply because you were afraid of what silence would reveal. But now, silence doesn't scare you. It strengthens you. It's no longer empty. It's full of direction, full of clarity, full of truth. And the deeper you go into it, the more obvious it becomes. Everything you need is already within you. You don't need louder support. You need stronger conviction. You don't need constant feedback. You need consistent action. You don't need external approval. You need internal alignment. That's how everything begins to fall into place. Not all at once, but piece by piece, layer by layer. When you stay focused, stay silent, and stay committed, the right people, the right opportunities, the right moments begin to find you. Not because you're chasing, but because you become the kind of person they're drawn to. Keep going. Your stillness is speaking. Your discipline is building. And your future is already listening. Not everything needs your reaction. Not everything deserves your attention. When you finally realize how much peace you lose by constantly engaging with noise, you begin to value silence as protection, not absence. You no longer need to respond to every insult, prove every point, or defend every move. Because real growth isn't loud. It's quiet, steady, and deeply intentional. The stronger you become within, the less you feel the need to be understood from the outside. You shift from proving your worth to preserving your peace, and that's the most powerful transformation of all. Silence is where you meet your true self. No filters, no performance, just truth. And the truth is, you've spent too long giving your power away, bit by bit, moment by moment, trying to be everything for everyone, while losing touch with yourself. But now, you're rebuilding. And this time, it's different. Because now, you're not trying to impress. You're trying to align. You're not running on approval. You're running on purpose. And once you touch that clarity, you never want to go back. You'd rather be alone and focused than surrounded and drained. You'd rather be misunderstood and at peace than accepted and unsettled. Your silence is not a weakness. It's a choice. A conscious decision to no longer be reactive, but strategic. A sign that you're no longer seeking to control others, but mastering control over yourself. You understand that time is energy, and energy is life. The way you spend it defines the quality of your future. So you stop wasting it on things that don't matter. You stop letting small things pull you off course. You stop handing your power to people who don't even know what to do with their own. Instead, you stay rooted in your own lane, focused on your own path, and committed to your own mission. And because of that, you grow, quietly, consistently, unapologetically. People may not understand your silence. Let them wonder. Let them talk. While they speak, you build. While they guess, you evolve. Because your life is no longer about explanation. It's about elevation. You rise by staying grounded. You win by staying focused. And you heal by staying still. That stillness isn't passive. It's active. It's the kind of stillness that moves mountains internally. The kind that separates you from your past without needing to announce it. The kind that signals to the world, I'm not available for anything that doesn't align with my peace. You don't owe anyone your noise. You owe yourself your future. And every second you choose silence over chaos. Every moment you choose purpose over distraction. You move closer to it. You move deeper into who you were always meant to be. The most powerful version of yourself doesn't chase. It attracts. It doesn't compete. It creates. It doesn't react. It rises. Keep moving in silence. Keep focusing on yourself. The ones who move with discipline don't just get results, they become unstoppable. The most dangerous version of you is the one who finally stops seeking permission. The one who no longer waits for validation. The one who realizes that peace doesn't require approval, and growth doesn't require applause. When you focus entirely on yourself and move in silence, something powerful happens. You become untouchable. Not because nothing can reach you, but because nothing can control you anymore. You take back the power you gave away so easily before. You stop bending just to be accepted. You stop shrinking just to make others comfortable. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. And in that silence, you begin to hear your own voice louder than ever before. Your energy becomes your filter. If it doesn't bring peace, purpose, or progress, you let it go. You no longer chase after people who make you feel like you have to earn their attention. You don't waste your words trying to convince anyone of your worth. You've already decided you're enough. You've already chosen yourself. And from that decision, everything else begins to change. You stop doubting your intuition. You stop second-guessing your moves. You trust your silence to speak for you. Because it does. It says, I'm focused, I'm healing, I'm building, I'm rising. The most powerful work you'll ever do will be done in private. No spotlight, no recognition. Just you and your discipline. Just you and your commitment to become the person you know you can be. It won't always feel good. It won't always feel exciting. But the results will be undeniable. The more you grow, the less you need to announce it. Growth doesn't need an audience. It needs consistency. And when you stay consistent with your focus and intentional with your silence, you become magnetic. You no longer chase alignment. You attract it. You no longer fear change. You command it. People will begin to sense something different about you. They won't be able to put it into words, but they'll feel it. That calm, that clarity, that control. That's what silence gives you. You become the calm in the chaos. The grounded presence in a world addicted to noise. You stop living on reaction. You start living on purpose. No longer pulled by opinions, no longer driven by pressure. Just deeply rooted in your mission. Fully present in your growth and unshakable in your vision. It takes strength to stay silent when you could speak. It takes wisdom to walk away when you could fight. But it takes true power to focus so deeply on yourself that you outgrow every version of who you used to be. That kind of power doesn't demand attention. It commands respect. And when you build it, nothing external can break you. Keep going. Keep rising. Keep showing up for yourself in silence. The ones who win loud are temporary. The ones who win quiet, they last forever.